Hey there, bookworms. Welcome to Pouring Over Books, a podcast where we dive into the books we love and maybe a few we didn't. I'm your host, LaShawn, and every week I'll be deep diving into what I'm reading, recommendations, and talking about all the things that we love about books. So grab your favorite coffee or tea, find a cozy spot, and let's get ready to pour over some great books together. Hey friends, and welcome back to the Pouring Over Books podcast. I am LaShawn, your host. And friends, can you believe that it is the last full week of June? How did we get here? Like, seriously, how did we get here? I feel like I just got back from vacation, but still, here we are. Summer is summering, and I'm trying to enjoy what I'm calling my slow girl summer by not planning all the things. I am a planner, in case you didn't know. I switched up my legendary morning routine. I say legendary because I am known for getting up at 4 and doing all the things before most people wake up. But I said for once in my life, I was going to take it easy, and I moved my alarm to 5. That may not seem like such a big deal, but it really, really is. And instead of trying to get in all the work and rushing to exercise and all the things, I've been slipping into some yoga and then taking the time to read a book for 30 minutes in the morning. It's been a great way to embrace summer and the slower pace that comes with summer. I can do all of this and still get my son to football practice early in the morning for this portion of summer, because soon it's going to change and they're going to switch to evening practices. But that's a whole nother story. But anyway, I can't wait to talk to you next week about my favorite June reads. But in the meantime, I know I'm late, but happy Pride Month, everyone. Today, we are going to go ahead with that episode that I planned to do last week before the book's social media world lost their ever collective minds. This week, we are going to talk about some of the best queer books for Pride Month and beyond. Because you know that just because it's Pride Month doesn't mean that you can only read these books this month and this month only. You can read them all year because they are stories, good stories that everyone will love, no matter your sexual orientation. Because that's what good books do, friends. They expand your world and they're enjoyable while you read them. So I have, 6 books here that I want to suggest and press into your hands for Pride Month. Let's get started. The first book on my list is Giovanni's Room by James Baldwin. Let's talk about the premise. In 1950s Paris, David is a young American expat who has just proposed marriage to his girlfriend Hella. While she is away on a trip, David meets a bartender named Giovanni, to whom he is drawn to in spite himself. Soon, the two are spending the night in Giovanni's curtainless room, which he keeps dark to protect their privacy. But Hella's return to Paris brings the affair to a crisis, one that rapidly spirals into tragedy. David struggles for self-knowledge during one long dark night, the night which is leading me to the most terrible morning of my life, he says. That's a quote. With a sharp, probing imagination, James Baldwin's now classic narrative delves into the mystery of loving and creates a deeply moving story of death and passion that reveals the unspoken complexities of the human heart. This is on my forever TBR, since my goal one day is to read James Baldwin's entire catalog, his entire body of work. I'm going to get to it, but y'all, there are a lot of books. But this is on my TBR list. I even own this somewhere in this house, so I know I'm going to get to it. The next book on my list for you to read is Rainbow Boys by Alex Sanchez. The premise: 3 high school seniors navigate coming out and finding themselves. Jason is a popular athlete, hiding his attraction to boys. Kyle is quietly gay and terrified of being outed, and Nelson is proudly out but scared to confess his feelings to his crush. As their lives intersect, they face love, heartbreak, and the challenges of acceptance in a world that doesn't always understand. In his debut novel, Alex Sanchez captures the emotional highs and lows of adolescence, identity, and friendship with honesty and heart. I heard about this book years ago, and I even remember seeing it on a bookshelf in my son's English classroom in middle school. So I know it's a good one. And even though I feel like it's YA gearish, I read YA. So I know that this one is on my list. And I want to suggest this one because you never know. You might have a teen in your life who needs this book. And it's just a good book for any teen to read. Because why? Once again, friends, why do we read books? Because they broaden our horizons. The next book on my list is Black on Both Sides, A Racial History of Trans Identity by C. Riley Snorton. Black on Both Sides by C. Riley Snorton explores the deep, often overlooked intersections of Blackness and transness from the 19th century to today. Challenging the dominant narrative centered on Christine Jurgensen, Snorton highlights erased Black trans figures like Lucy Hicks Anderson and James McHarris. Drawing from diverse sources, literature, medical texts, journalism, and film, Snorton examines how slavery, racialized gender, and historical violence shape understandings of gender. The book also critiques the exclusion of Black trans experiences in mainstream media, such as the erasure of Philip Devine in Boys Don't Cry, pushing for broader, more inclusive visions of Black and trans life. While researching for this podcast, I came across this book and I have added it to my own TBR. Most likely it's going to be one of those I listen to on audio because, as you know, I am a nonfiction listener. So I find that I process the books better when I read them on audiobooks. So it has been added to my audiobook TBR. The next book on our list is Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. In The Red, White, and Royal Blue, Alex Claremont Diaz, first son of the U.S., is forced into a fake friendship with Britain's Prince Henry after a public altercation. But their rivalry turns into a secret romance that threatens international relations and Alex's mother's re-election campaign. As their connection deepens, both must decide if love is worth risking everything. Casey McQuiston's debut is a witty, heartfelt exploration of identity, politics, and the courage it takes to live and love authentically. You know I can't say certain words. It's a daggone shame. Anyway, I gave this a 5 out of 5 when I read it a few years ago. My review says this was unexpectedly good. And whenever someone asks me for even a love story, if they ask for a male love story, I always give them this one first. And if sometime when they just ask for a love story, I automatically recommend this book because it is just so good. I saw it was the Amazon Prime adaptation of this book, and I really didn't want Prince Henry to have that hair color. It just didn't work for me. But anyway, the next book on our list is All Boys Aren't Blue, a memoir manifesto by George M. Johnson. All Boys Aren't Blue by George M. Johnson is a powerful young adult memoir told through personal essays. Johnson reflects on growing up Black and queer in New Jersey and Virginia, sharing stories of childhood bullying, family love, first relationships, and identity. With honesty and heart, the book explores themes like gender identity, toxic masculinity, consent, and Black joy. It offers support and visibility for queer youth of color while educating its allies. Both deeply personal and socially relevant, this memoir is a vital guide for understanding and embracing intersectional identities. I do want to say there are content warnings for this for sexual assault, statutory rape, death, racism, denaming, and transphobia. I ran a banned book club last year or the year before last, and I intended to get this one on our list to get to read this one, but we literally ran out of time. I'm saving it now for when I decide to open up the banned book club again. So we shall see. Stay tuned. The last book on the list that I want to talk about today is Homebodies by Tembe Denton-Hurst. In Homebodies, queer Black journalist Mickey Hayward seems to have it all: a trendy media job, a supportive girlfriend, and distance from her chaotic past in Maryland. But when she's suddenly replaced at work, Mickey writes a powerful letter calling out the racism she's faced. The lack of response, even from her partner, leaves her reeling. She returns home to regroup, only to confront old wounds and and a tempting former flame, and the reality of a career that never truly embraced her. A movie exploration of queerness, identity, and the cost of corporate racism. Homebodies is a sharp, unforgettable portrait of modern Black womanhood. I love this one. I rated it a 4 out of 5 on Goodreads when I read it. And it too is one of those books that I just keep recommending. It was so good. It came out last year, 2024. Yep. So good one. Go find it. Well, friends, hopefully you found something from my little short list to add to your TBR. There are so many more books that I could have recommended. The list is endless. If you really want to know, it is so easy to find a book with a queer main character. There really is no excuse. Right now in the Pouring Over Books book club, we are reading Invisible Life by Elin Harris. Our discussion is this week because it is the last week of the month. This book is a classic, and it was the first book with a homosexual character that I ever read. It opened up my eyes so much. And I remember reading it and being like, oh my God. Sometimes when you just have no clue that another world existed and it opens your eyes, I will never forget that feeling. And that is why I chose to read that book this month for the book club. If you are a member of the book club, I can't wait to chit chat with you about this later on this week. Anyway, now, let's talk about what I just read, what I'm currently reading, and what I plan, quote unquote, to read next. I just finished reading The Night Ends with Fire by KX Song. It was nowhere on my list because you've never heard of it. It was nowhere on my list, but I saw a reel with a brief summary of the book. Not even a summary. It was just like a quick, this is what happens between the two main characters or something like that. And I was intrigued, So when I looked, it wasn't available on Kindle Unlimited, but it was available immediately on Libby. And the second book in the series, because it is a duology, comes out in August. So I was like, I don't have too long to wait. If I like this is cool. This is great. So I gave it a go. Let me tell you about the premise. The three kingdoms are at war, but Melan's father refuses to answer the imperial draft. Trapped by his opium addiction, he plans to sell Melan for her dinery. But when Melan discovers her husband-to-be is another violent, ill-tempered man, she realizes that nothing will change for her unless she takes matters into her own hands. The very next day, she disguises herself as a boy and enlists in her father's place. In the army, Melan's relentless hard work begins to bring her recognition, friendship, and growing closeness with Sky, a prince-turned-training partner. But has she simply exchanged one prison for another? As her kingdom barrels towards destruction, Melan begins to have visions of a sea dragon spirit that offers her true power and freedom, but with a deadly price. With the future of the three kingdoms hanging in the balance, Melan will need to decide whom to trust. Sky, who inspires her loyalty and love, the sea dragon spirit, who has his own murky agenda, or an infuriating enemy prince who makes her question everything she once knew about her kingdom and about her own heart. This is basically a Mulan-inspired book. I say inspired because she is running away not to save her father, but to save herself. I was intrigued because I rarely get to read romantasy that is set in Asian culture. It is one of those things that I know I need to be more aware of and looking for when I'm looking for books to read. Anyway, I like this one. It was a quick read, and while I can see where it's going, I'm really interested in how we get there. I thought Melan was a strong character, even though I questioned her common sense sometimes, but I had to remember she was sheltered and young. But I enjoyed the ride. There was no sex in this novel. And between that and the character development, I had to keep checking to make sure I wasn't reading a YA novel. I would have kept reading if it was a YA novel, but I kept saying to myself, is this a YA novel? Until we got to a almost sex scene. And I was like, oh, okay. But still, no actual sex. Nothing. It wasn't closed door, but there's no actual sex. It was beautifully written though, and it got a ton of world building, and it didn't feel too overwhelming to me learning about the whole system. When our love interest becomes involved in a love triangle, like kind of sort of towards the end, I was pleasantly surprised. I was like, oh. So now I'm looking forward to the next one. I gave this one a strong 3.75 out of 5. If I'm honest, I took off for the ending. It's not bad, but I side-eyed it. Because after all of that, really? But anyway, especially some of her, but anyway, I'm trying not to give away the plot. Now to what I am currently reading. I am currently about 50% through Broken Country by Clare Leslie Hall, and by the time this published, I may be finished. Maybe. The premise. In Broken Country, Beth's quiet life with her husband Frank begins to unravel after a gunshot kills a dog, one that belongs to Gabrielle Wolfe, her first love. Gabriel's return to the village with his young son stirs painful memories for Beth's own tragic loss and reignites old feelings. As past secrets resurface and tensions escalate, Beth is drawn into a web of jealousy, grief, and unresolved passion. With the village on edge and her past colliding with the present, Beth must confront who she was and who she wants to be. A gripping blend of love story and a slow burning thriller. Oh my God, guys, this is so good. It is like half thriller, like they said, it's half thriller, half romance, half What on Earth Happened. I am so intrigued, and I will report back next week with a full review because I did not expect to be this drawn in. But from page 1, I was like, oh, so yes, it's good. I am also listening to Harlem Rhapsody by Victoria Christopher Murphy. The premise. In 1919, a high school teacher from Washington, D.C. arrives in Harlem excited to realize her lifelong dream. Jessie Redmond Fawcett has been named the literary editor of The Crisis, the first Black woman to hold this position at a preeminent Negro magazine. Jessie is posed to achieve literary greatness, but she holds a secret that jeopardizes it all. W.E.B. Du Bois, the founder of The Crisis, is not only Jessie's boss, he's her lover, and neither his wife nor their 14-year age difference can keep the two apart. Amidst rumors of their tumultuous affair, Jessie is determined to prove herself. She attacks the challenge of discovering young writers with fervor, finding 16-year-old Conti Cullen, 17-year-old Langston Hughes, and Nella Larson, who becomes one of her best friends. Under Jessie's leadership, The Crisis thrives. Every African-American writer in the country wants their work published there. When her first novel is released to great acclaim, it's clear that Jessie is at the heart of the Renaissance in Black music, theater, and the arts. She has shaped a generation of literary legends, but as she strives to preserve her legacy, she'll discover the high cost of her unparalleled success. I have been trying to read this book since it came out in February. It's historical fiction based on real people and real facts. Jessie Redmond Fawcett and W.E. Du Bois did, in fact, have an affair. I mean, evidently it was commonly known information. She did usher in the careers of Conti Cullen, Langston Hughes, and Nella Larson. I think Langston Hughes called her the fairy godmother of the Harlem Renaissance. Like without her discovering a lot of them, it wouldn't have been. So I love the Harlem Renaissance. It is like one of my favorite historical eras in the United States and it is just, I love it. So anyway, I wanted to read this novel, and when it came out, I tried. I had an arc for it and everything, and could not get into it like at all. And I was like, okay, it's just not for me, and I could not figure out why. But I decided to pick it back up, and I decided to listen to it. And that, my friends, made the difference. There is actual singing in the audio version. The lady who narrates, sometimes she breaks out in song. Like there's this scene where they're in the club, and I can't remember who was singing, but she sang parts of it, and it just brings something more to the story than I got out of just reading it. And I am really, really enjoying it. The story is good. I find myself wanting to cuss Will, W.E.B. Du Bois, y'all, and shake my head at Jessie and her mama. But I'll finish this soon and have an update for you on this one next week when I talk about the books I read in June, because I will finish this one. I think I'm about 50% through it now. After I finish these two, the next book on my list is The Girls Who Grew Big by Leila Mottley. Let's talk about it. And Adela Woods is 16 years old and pregnant. Her parents banish her from her comfortable upbringing in Indiana to her grandmother's home in small town Padua Beach, Florida. When she arrives, Adela meets Emery, who brings her newborn to high school, determined to graduate despite the odds. Simone, mother of 4-year-old twin, who weighs her options when she finds herself pregnant again, and the rest of the girls, a group of outcast young moms who raise their growing broad on the back of Simone's red truck. The town thinks the girls have lost their way, but really they are finding it, looking for love, making and breaking friendships, and navigating the miracle of motherhood and the paradox of girlhood. The book was on my summer reading guide, and it is out today, June 24th, Tuesday. So I'm going to wrap up my current reads and start on this one. I'll let you know how that goes, maybe. I doubt I'll be finished next week because I will get distracted. I've already been distracted even while adding that one to my TBR, that I saw another book. I listened to a podcast this morning and something got added. I swear, it's so sad. It's so sad. Anyway, I hope I won't get distracted by anything else, but I don't hold out too much hope. Okay, friends, that's all I have this week. If you love the episode, do me a favor and make sure you follow the podcast so that you don't miss the next one. It's free. It helps the show and it keeps your TBR interesting and helps us find more bookish friends. As always, you can follow me personally on IG and TikTok at LaShawn Wiltz and on Substack by searching for Letters to LaShawn. Okay, friends, thanks for listening. I will talk to you next week. Bye-bye.